Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 13th. This is the time of year to throw a spring garden party. It doesn't have to be fancy. A few chairs, a pitcher of something cold, and a neighbor you haven't seen since the leaves came down. The garden does most of the work. It sets the table, it arranges the flowers, and it gives everyone something to talk about, because nothing starts a conversation faster than a bloom someone hasn't seen before. You can offer to walk your guests through the beds, encourage them to touch new green leaves or smell an herb, and have a little one pull a radish if you've got one ready. Sharing your garden is the best gift of all. And you don't have to give anything away. Just open the gate and let people in. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1906 that the American publisher Enid Annenberg Haupt was born in Chicago. She once said, "Nature is my religion. There is no life in concrete and paint." Enid spent 99 years living that statement. Growing up, Enid was the fourth child of 8 in the Annenberg family, a dynasty built on publishing and the hard politics of American media. But she found her way into the orbit of orchids. It started when her second husband, Ira Haupt, a Wall Street financier, courted Enid with a single spray of cymbidium orchids. And Enid, who was raised surrounded by money and power, looked at the orchid and saw something that meant more to her than all of it: beauty. She was so smitten with orchids that for her wedding, Enid requested 13 orchid plants instead of jewelry. Professionally, Enid ran 17 magazine for 16 years, and she transformed it into a serious primer on careers and literature for young women. Reflecting on her active lifestyle, she once said, "I haven't the time for boredom." But it was gardens that became the great work of her life. When the Victorian Conservatory at the New York Botanical Garden was about to be demolished, Enid sold jewelry from her personal collection to make the first $5 million gift that saved it. As she aged, Enid came to see plants as something people needed, but also something that made the world a better place. And she believed beauty was not just a luxury, but a human right. Over the years, Enid gave more than $34 million to the Botanical Garden alone, and she funded a 4-acre garden on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., behind the Smithsonian Castle. Above all, she wanted it to feel like it had always been there, just waiting for visitors on the day it opened, so that the average person could walk in and feel peace immediately. And when she bought George Washington's former estate in Virginia, called River Farm, she turned around and donated it to the American Horticultural Society. Enid also cared about accessibility, and she built one of the first wheelchair-accessible gardens at a hospital where children could reach the flowers from their chairs. And when the money ran short on many of the projects she sponsored, Enid sold Impressionist paintings from her own private collection, her inheritance. Monet, Van Gogh, Gauguin, Cézanne, and Renoir, 15 masterpieces for $25 million. Unlike many who found gardens, Enid believed that if you helped create a garden, you must endow it, because a gift without a future is just a burden that often ends up all for naught and lost to time. By the time Enid died in 2005, she had given away more than $140 million. and nearly all of it to gardens and green spaces that were open to the public, which makes Enid Annenberg Haupt the greatest patron American horticulture has ever known. And it was on this day in 2018 that the English plantswoman Beth Chatto died peacefully at her home in Elmstead Market, a small village in Essex, about 6 miles east of Colchester in southeast England. She was 94 years old. Beth was born in 1923. Her mother, Edith, gave her her first trowel in the garden. It was the beginning. When Beth married the botanist Andrew Chatto, his lifelong research into the origins of plants helped spark the scientific bones for Beth's own ideas about plants, garden design, and working with what the land would allow. Beth's work in the garden centered on a single radical idea: right plant, right place. It sounds obvious now, but it wasn't at the time. In the 1950s, the British gardening ideal was a manicured lawn along with stiff beds of annuals ripped out every single autumn and replaced every single spring. If the soil was wrong, you changed the soil. If the ground was too wet, you drained it. Beth said no to it all and encouraged gardeners to flip the paradigm by advising them to find plants that already want to grow in their garden, the ones who thrive in that kind of habitat. In her late 30s, Beth began work on her new place, set on a difficult and challenging piece of land. There were boggy hollows, parched gravel beds, brambles, and scrub. And while her neighbors told Beth to just forget it, she somehow could envision 5 gardens. When she set to work, Beth dug out ponds and shaped them like clouds. And on the dry gravel, she planted silver-leafed specimens. That silver color was telltale, a sign, and told her all she needed to know. Those plants wouldn't need pampering. And that's why she concentrated on euphorbias, lavender, and giant feathery grasses that caught the wind and light like something breathing. Beth once said, "I don't want a garden that looks like a florist shop. I want a garden that looks like a piece of the world." Nearly 20 years later, Beth brought her unique combination of plants to the Chelsea Flower Show. The traditionalists were horrified. In a move all her own, Beth displayed grasses and lowly, common plants like cow parsley, plants most people at the time regarded as weeds. And yet Beth somehow managed to win the gold medal. And then she won it again. In all, Beth won 10 consecutive gold medals. Her standout garden, the coup de grace, came when Beth was nearly 70. And yet another bold move, she planted a gravel garden on a former parking lot, and then, to the shock of everyone watching, she never watered it. Not once, not ever. Outside of rain, the gravel garden remains unwatered today, and it's still blooming. Over her long career, Beth picked up ideas and tips and tricks from many different designers and artists. She credited most of her artistic eye to her friend, the painter Cedric Morris. He taught Beth to see a garden as a canvas. Along the way, Beth made many friends in the garden community, but her dearest garden friend was Christopher Lloyd, who went by Christo, the master gardener of Great Dixter. In the garden, Beth and Christo were polar opposites. Beth was silver and restrained. Christo was orange and chaos. She once wrote to him, "I feel like a tired old horse, plodding along. Then comes your letter, like a sharp spur." Beth's gardens, 7.5 acres in the sticks of Essex, are now a National Heritage Landscape, and her granddaughter Julia runs the nursery today. And the lasting insight Beth gave us, right plant, right place, remains the quietest law in modern gardening. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from the English poet and memoirist Laurie Lee, who died on this day, May 13th, in 1997. Laurie grew up in the Slade Valley in Gloucestershire, a small Cotswold village with steep lanes and half-wild gardens. His memoir, called Cider with Rosie, is a love letter to a vanishing rural world, written especially to honor his mom. Here is Laurie remembering his mother in the garden. So with the family gone, Mother lived as she wished. Slowly, snugly, she grew into her background. Warm on her grassy bank, poking and peering among the flowery bushes, disheveled and bright as they. Serenely unkept were those final years, free from conflict, doubt, or dismay, while she reverted gently to a rustic simplicity, as a moss rose reverts to a wild one. Earlier, Laurie wrote of his mother's knack for working with roses. He wrote, "She could grow them anywhere, at any time, and they seemed to live longer for her. She grew them with rough, almost slapdash love, but her hands possessed such an understanding of their needs, they seemed to turn to her like another son." Laurie's mother was not a formal gardener or a designer. She was simply a woman who worked without a plan, and she welcomed self-seeders and forgave the weeds. Laurie described her this way: "All day she trotted to and fro, flushed and garrulous, pouring flowers into every pot and jug she could find, until the dim interior of the house seemed entirely possessed by the outside world. A still green pool, flooding with honeyed tides of summer." That passage isn't really just a description. It's a restoration. Word by word, Laurie reveals how much his mom puttered about in the garden. And I love that last image, a woman who loved the garden so much, she just kept bringing it inside, as if the house wasn't enough for her. And it turns out that when the garden was welcomed inside the house, it of course felt right at home. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, In a Green Shade by Lacy. This book is part of Mother's Day week here on The Daily Gardener, and that means that all of this week's book recommendations feature garden stories about care, inheritance, teaching, and the quiet ways that gardening is passed from one generation to the next. In a Green Shade gathers Alan's essays on gardens and gardeners in one lovely book. Most of these writings were culled from a newsletter called Home Ground, a father and son project that Alan almost didn't start. In the introduction, Alan tells the story. "Soon after I gave up my column in the Times, my younger son Michael, a magazine art director, began mumbling that he and I should publish a gardening newsletter together. I resisted, but he persisted, entreating me to consider the wonders of desktop publishing and the miracles of software programs with strange names not in any known language. Finally, on Christmas Eve, he nudged me again. This time, I said yes. On New Year's Eve, Michael dropped by to show me the design dummy for Homeground. The newsletter comes out quarterly and runs to 16 pages an issue. It's now approaching its 8th year. I had new things to worry about, such as the costs of paper, advertising, and postage. We started off with no subscribers, and then we got a few, and then a few more every month. We've had a satisfying renewal rate, but Martha Stewart need not fear our competition. On the page, Alan wrote like a gardener who has been working the same land for a very long time. He didn't just give advice. He just shared what he noticed. For Mother's Day week, In a Green Shade speaks to that gentle continuity, honoring the gardeners who came before us and taught by example, often without ever naming what they were doing. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, in 1907, that Daphne du Maurier was born in London. Most people know Daphne from her book Rebecca, the novel with the opening line that's unforgettable. Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again. But here's the thing about Daphne. She wasn't writing about a fictional garden. Manderley, with its rhododendrons roaring 50 feet high, and the azaleas blooming in secret, and the ivy throwing tendrils around everything it could reach, was actually a real place called Minnebilly, and it was her home, set on the southern coast of Cornwall. The estate overlooked the sea. Long before fame came calling, Daphne stumbled on the property as a young woman, and when she arrived to check it out, she pushed her way through brambles and followed an overgrown path. And then, when the house appeared, it was like something from a dream. Daphne fell in love with it right away, and with the wildness of the land. Rhododendrons gone feral, and rare specimens planted by some long-ago gardener grew tangled together in what Daphne called an alien marriage. In 1943, Daphne leased Minnebilly. She moved in, and quietly, she began to tend it back to life. She didn't redesign it. She simply lived with it. She walked its paths every day and wrote her books in a small hut on the grounds, with a garden just outside the window. Daphne's daughters remember that wherever she lived, the house was always full of flowers. In one of Daphne's books, there's a scene where a small child slips away from a garden party and into the woods at the edge of the lawn. She wrote, "The woods were made for secrecy. They did not recognize her as the garden did." In Daphne's work, gardens were not decoration. They were witness to the humans they lived alongside, the one place that truly knew you. Daphne lived at Minnebilly for more than 2 decades, and when the lease finally expired, the owners called to say they wanted it back. The news nearly broke her. Looking back, she had given the garden her best years, and the garden had shaped those moments of thought, dreaming, and creativity into books. Daphne du Maurier died in 1989. She was 81 years old. As we close the show today, remember, this is the time of year when the garden does most of the work. Take some time to enjoy it. Grab a couple of chairs and find something cold to drink. Fill the kiddie pool with some Epsom salts and soak your feet beside a neighbor you haven't seen in a while. Suddenly, it's a party. Cheers. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.